This video is a film study review of the Detroit Lions' first possession in a 37-24 win over the Bengals. I believe John Morton came out with a very specific plan to utilize 12 personnel as a control feature for at least a couple of reasons. Number one, to keep Cincinnati in their base 3-4, or I may slip up and actually call it a 5-2 structure. Number two, oftentimes setting two tight ends to the left side of Detroit's offense. Basically, stick two tight ends next to Giovanni Manu. I believe that the Bengals, or that Morton had an idea that the Bengals set Trey Hendrickson up as the weak side defensive end away from tight ends generally, and that he was using that, he being Morton, was using that as a control feature to limit Manu's exposure to Trey Hendrickson. We'll go over every play from the first possession. I'm not sure if you guys enjoy these. I've gotten a lot of feedback, positive and negative. One of my favorite types of videos to produce, because you can look at the progression of how plays are called and try to make assumptions or make an educated guess, if you will, on why an offensive coordinator took a possession in a certain direction. So 12 personnel on 1st and 10. First play of the game, in fact. So what response do they get with two tight ends on the field? You get the 5-2 or 3-4 look from the Bengals. And Trey Hendrickson is on the left-hand side. We're going to focus on him a handful of times in this video just because of where the tight ends are positioned and then how the Bengals responded in terms of where they aligned Trey Hendrickson as a response. It's a reverse to Jameson Williams. I like the reverse early in the game. I don't think it's arrogant. I don't think it's trying to make a big play early. I think it's just trying to loosen a defense up that might be a fast flow structure. So motion across with LaPorta. And then the right guard, Tate Ratledge is going to pull. So they're trying to hold the second-level defenders. They're trying to get those guys flowing or moving with the pulling guard. We're talking about Ratledge pulling as the right guard and then possibly holding this second-level defender. It doesn't work out. B.J. Hill is an extremely underrated football player. He's in here, combo block, or basically down block by Penei Sewell. He lets go of him to work upfield, and I wish he had not, but he's got a dual assignment there. He being Penei Sewell, he's got the assignment of trying to block down on the defensive tackle and then work up to the safety. How many tackles can you ask that of in the NFL or any level of football for that matter? Sure enough, it's the guy that Penei Sewell had control of for a moment that makes the tackle for only a 1-yard gain. Very next snap, and again, you see with the dynamic that I'm talking about, it's 12 personnel, different formation based on the terminology that I know. There's hundreds of different terminologies that people use in football, so these are not ubiquitous, obviously, but Trey left under center. So Trey left is when you have two tight ends and a wide receiver, in this case, Jameson Williams, all lined up or slotted to the same side. The response that they get, Joseph Asai, number 58, is the strong side defensive end. Trey Hendrickson set up to the other side to be matched up with Penei Sewell. There's the two tight ends. And I think this is just a check by John Morton. Basically, when you look at personnel groupings and then the formations that flow from them, these offensive coordinators, at any level of football, to be honest with you, but definitely the NFL, they know what coverage structures you use and which ones you don't. And so I think that John Morton just used 12 personnel as a dual or perhaps triple control feature. Here, Hendrickson is matched up against Sewell, kind of getting some topside pressure. Jared Goff, I think, is looking for St. Brown. This kind of Tampa 2 look for the Bengals. Tampa 2 sink, if you will, talking about this corner sinking with St. Brown's route down the right top of the numbers. And then Goff gets this out to Jahmyr Gibbs, kind of a low throw for whatever reason. And then this is just magic, how he's able to get this done. I think it's a 13 or 14-yard gain on a 2nd and 9. He's a special talent, man. He's unpredictable. Much of what the Lions do offensively is intentional. I remember hearing Kobe Bryant talk about modern basketball and calling it accidental basketball versus intentional. And I think Detroit's offense is intentional. It's been so under Ben Johnson, and it is now under John Morton. Here is same play from the end zone angle. Here's Hendrickson on the defense's left with the two tight ends set up on the opposite side. So again, I think he's the weak side defensive end. Going to get some pressure by 98 against Glasgow up the middle. And a topside rush from Hendrickson. Goff is looking down the field to he's looking to the side of the field where St. Brown and Gibbs are located. I wondered at first why he kind of pump fakes this. And I guess maybe it's because Gibbs kind of falls down or loses his footing, which even makes this play look more impressive. The throw is a little bit low, and then he just totally discards an inside linebacker. That's just what Jahmyr Gibbs does, generally, if you give him any space at all, make the first guy miss. I know his yards per catch haven't been great to start 2025. That's a temporary thing, if you ask me. All you got to do is get that guy in space, and he's going to make people miss. Very next snap, like I said, we'll go over each play on this touchdown drive. First possession, 1st and 10, 12 personnel, Trey left to the left again, and that gets the same reaction from the Bengals in terms of Trey Hendrickson being on the opposite side. When I say that there's coverages that flow from the personnel that the offensive deploys, what I mean is there's certain coverages they don't play. And I don't know what they are. I don't have access to that information. But this is the same look, basically, for the Cincinnati Bengals. The only difference is now they've walked up Geno Stone, presumably to play man on the outside tight end, while Logan Wilson plays man on the inside tight end, which is LaPorta. This is man. And a huge win for LaPorta. I think that there's so many weapons on this offense. It's borderline unfair to have all of these guys. Goff is looking to that side of the field. That's the read side. Jameson Williams on this kind of deep corner route, a safety over the top. Could Goff throw it to the bottom left corner of our screen, but obviously off screen, deep to Williams? Sure, he could, but such a win by LaPorta. I'm glad to see that he got early game targets, and then he adds to it by discarding Wilson for a 22-yard gain. In my opinion, this was like a check moment. Basically, we'll line up in 12 personnel 2 or 3 times on his first possession. We'll see what you provide, what your response is defensively. And Morton, is just checking, okay, the coverage umbrella that we had on paper, the data we had coming into the game, maybe in between the 30s, let's say. Against 12 personnel, it looks like this and this. And then gets the same exact looks the first 2 or 3 times that they line up in 12 personnel. And again, for me, that's a check by Morton. Okay, I know where Hendrickson's going to be, number 1. Number 2, I know what coverages you will and will not be in. And so, therefore, Goff has a pretty good idea of where to go with this football. You get LaPorta and Wilson kind of colliding, knocking Wilson off balance, first of all. And then Gibbs flowing through man on the inside linebacker. Man by the inside linebacker, excuse me. The read, like I said, is Williams and LaPorta off screen to our right, to our bottom right. Huge win. Look at all the space that is there for LaPorta down, to the field side. Just left Logan Wilson behind. Logan Wilson's a really good inside linebacker. I'm a Ravens fan, and so I don't have the same opinion about him as so many other Ravens fans who think he's sorry. He's a good football player, but here Morton and Goff, by extension, have put him in his relative weakness, which is man coverage. That would not occur if it was 11 personnel. You'd have a nickel DB possibly covering LaPorta, or you'd have the will linebacker, the linebacker lined up into the boundary. Everyone out on the field for Detroit is talented. This was a very specific, intentional game plan, in my opinion. Moving forward, another 12 personnel group, ball on the left hash with the 2 tight ends set to the field. So when I refer to the Mike and the Will, what I mean is Logan Wilson generally going to line up to the field, and the Will lined up to the boundary, whether it's 42 or 44, Knight, the rookie. Same response for the Bengals. And oh, by the way, with the 2 tight ends to the right-hand side, the top side of our screen, there is Trey Hendrickson set to the bottom side. Smart, if you ask me, deployment by John Morton. When he did put the 2 tight ends to the top side, he didn't throw the football because he knew that the matchup here would be Manu against Trey Hendrickson, which, of course, is not in his favor. I don't think there's really any run schemes where you want to leave the frontside inside linebacker totally unblocked, and Logan Wilson is here, but Gibbs makes it work, just totally makes him miss. 98 with the tackle on the backside, still ends up being a 7-yard gain. Give you the same play from the end zone angle. Here's what I mean, just to confirm for you guys so you can see the numbers more clearly. 2 tight ends to the offense's right, our left, and there is Trey Hendrickson lined up on the opposite side. I didn't really notice it during the game, but I did watch in the film this afternoon. There's the will linebacker, so the way they're going to combo this is Sewell and Tate Radledge are going to deal with the defensive tackle in a combo situation. Wilson ends up being totally unblocked. My guess is that someone, somewhere, either one of these 2 tight ends, probably not Sewell, but one of those 2 tight ends was supposed to deal with Logan Wilson. It worked out, like I said, because you have a special talent there in Jahmyr Gibbs, a guy that just makes things happen in small space or large. Second and 3, the very next snap. In fact, and Detroit goes 11 personnel. The problem with that is, here's the tight end. You cannot predict necessarily where Hendrickson's going to be. Normally, he lines up to the defense's right or the offense's left. And I think that's what John Morton was trying to avoid by going 12 personnel so often. F counter concept where Tate Radledge really gets destroyed by 98 on a combo scheme. So we're talking about right in here. Sewell is going to help Radledge out. I really feel like Radledge should be able to get a little bit more accomplished here. He gets tossed to the side, and 98, lo and behold, is the guy who makes the play. It still ends up being a first down for Gibbs. It's a 4-yard gain. Same play from the end zone angle. There's LaPorta. He's going to pull Hendrickson lined up to that side. That's probably what you didn't want yesterday as much as possible. And again, I think that's why I feel comfortable calling this a control feature, going 12 personnel so much. So here's the combo on 98. I think it's Slater. The left guard is going to pull and kick, and then LaPorta is going to pull and then wrap to the front side inside linebacker. And Radledge really, I think, has leverage, and he gets helped out by Sewell. And then Slater just tosses him to the side. I believe it's Slater. I might have the name wrong there, even though you can kind of see it here. But the point is, I feel like this one could have very well been a touchdown if we get 98 handled better and don't get, pretty much hip tossed out of the view. Very next snap, Morton is right back into 12 personnel. And again, it's to the offense's left, trying to figure out or if they can keep Hendrickson away from Manu. It's Trey left, that same formation that we've been talking about with 2 tight ends. And the Bengals changed the look, right? They certainly changed the look. They walk 1, if not 2 safeties down here, and then put an inside linebacker up on the line as well. So really creating an 8/9-man front, trying to overwhelm Detroit from a number standpoint. Borderline impossible block here by St. Brown. Tough block, at least. Let's put it that way. With 1 or 2 DBs down into the box, and Gibbs is unable to get anything done. I think you've got a loss there up front by the offensive line. But credit the Bengals. They finally changed the look versus 12 personnel. So put yourself in Morton's mind at this point. He knew what to expect between the 30s. Got a different look here when he went back to 12 personnel from the Bengals. On a 1st and 10, only a 1-yard gain produced from it. So what does he do? Goes right back to 12 personnel, set up to the left-hand side once again, and that controls where Trey Hendrickson's going to be. He's going to be matched up with Sewell, which is what you would prefer. So when I say control feature, I mean that very specifically. This is, of course, the touchdown pass to LaPorta. Cincinnati has responded, even though it's 2nd and long. They've responded with their base 3-4 and or 5-2, whatever you want to call it, from a 2-high safety structure. It's going to be a chip release for LaPorta, who's the outside receiver, along with Brock Wright. Motion by St. Brown, and then his route effectively is going to act as a clear-out route for the outside receiver, Dax Hill. Here's the 2 tight ends blocking in combination, and Goff is on a little bit of a play-action track. His feet kind of betray him for a moment, I think, here. But he's orienting himself basically, I think, to almost... I'm talking about a moment after I unpause this. Almost to look at that safety and see what he's doing, in my opinion, and then already knew, that he's got LaPorta one-on-one out in space with Joseph Asai. St. Brown covered up by Dax Hill. Jameson Williams covered up by the corner, and then a safety dealing with him. All that space down there, just too talented, man. There's so much talent on this roster from an offensive standpoint. It's borderline unfair what defenses have to deal with in terms of matching all the different personnel groups. There is one more thing I'd like to mention from this play, and we'll take a look at the end zone angle to do so. As a Ravens fan, super jealous of the fact that Detroit was able to get Christian Mahogany in the 6th round of the 2024 NFL Draft. Athletic guy, very active, and I think this play just kind of illustrates the activity level. I've called it the frequency with which Detroit plays at on offense and defense. So he chips down on the defensive tackle, 90, and then immediately gets his head to look to the inside and takes over with the center on the nose tackle. Goff, I was slightly off in what I said earlier. He's actually looking kind of in the middle of the field at Williams, but I still believe he may have been checking with that safety who's located just off screen to the bottom right of here. It's Geno Stone. Comes back to LaPorta, who's in space against Joseph Asai, a talented pass rusher, a guy who, even as a Ravens fan, I root for. I remember all of his troubles in the AFC title game when he was a rookie. So I don't want him to see him play well against the Ravens nor the Lions, but he can't do this. Look at all this separation that there is between him And LaPorta ends up being an easy touchdown, really, an easy catch for LaPorta. Certainly not an easy finish to the play, and that he had to dive into the end zone. A brilliant first possession, in my opinion. Hopefully, I was able to do it justice, number one. And number two, bring some detail or perhaps some nuance to what I think John Morton was able to get accomplished in attacking Cincinnati's defense very specifically out of 12 personnel. So I want to make a comparison to what I see out of Detroit's offense in recent years, and I think I actually maybe used this comparison before. I'm a big combat sports guy and then NBA basketball. So for me, I think we'll look back at this at some point years down the road, and you or me or multiple people will say, how much talent was there on this team? It reminds me a little bit of like 90s era basketball or even 2000s, where there's just a ton of depth, really good players. Usually you'd have like 2 or 3 legit scorers that were younger, mixed with some veterans, maybe a guy who used to average 25 a game, and then he got signed to a championship contending roster for a season or two, and he only averaged 12 or 14, but you're like, wow, they've still got him available. The difference here is the Lions' offense is all young guys, and they do everything well. Morton and Campbell know what they have. They have guys who are committed to the team and versatile, and they play in a connected fashion. Basically, not only are they willing to block for each other, but when you see the guys celebrate touchdowns, whether it's Jamison Williams, LaPorta, St. Brown, Gibbs, Montgomery, they celebrate for each other with the same level of intensity as if they had just scored. And that, to me, is something that I've always noticed about football teams in general. Not basketball, baseball, or any other sport, really, do you see the dynamic of guys who celebrate for each other, and that tells you how connected they are, along with the way that they play in between the whistles, right? Each guy gets opportunities at some points. Here on the first possession, it was LaPorta that got going early. I think that was a check moment for Morton and the offensive staff. They had an idea how Cincinnati's defense would line up and how to attack that defense in coverage, whether it was man like you saw against Logan Wilson or some zone stuff where the defensive end / outside linebacker Joseph Asai is dropping out. If you guys enjoy the possession film study videos, please let me know in the comment section. I generally do get some positive feedback on them, but occasionally I've gotten some real negative emails like, why are you doing this? It's cheap content. I've tried to present as much depth as possible, and here I think I've maybe been able to reach that in the reason why you saw so much 12 personnel in the first possession. I don't know about you, but by the 5th play of it or 5th instance of it yesterday, I was like, okay, why so much 12? And then when you get to film this morning or this afternoon when I finally got access, I was like, okay, I get it now. So kudos to John Morton for protecting Manu and still creating effective, high percentage offensive opportunities for so many guys out of it. You're more than welcome to let me know if you think it was random, the 12 personnel, the 2 tight ends to one side in terms of a control feature. But in any case, if you enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section. Number one, likes and comments really drive, any engagement with the content really drives the exposure to a larger audience and helps us as content creators, continue to produce as much content as we possibly can. So if you enjoyed it, please like and comment down below. And then finally, if you think other Lions fans would enjoy this film study exploration of the first possession where Detroit took over and took a 7-0 lead, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.